Ella es una directora de investigación de CNRS y miembro del Institut de Mathématiques de Jussieu en París. Welcome everyone to our first plenary talk. Our speaker is Claire Boissin. She's a research director, class exceptionnelle, de CNRS, and a member of the Institut de Mathématiques de Jussieu in Paris. Claire Boissin is one of the most influential, prominent, and decorated algebraic geometrists in the world. And in addition to being an amazing mathematician, she is an excellent speaker. So I think that we're in for a real treat. El título de su presentación, the title of her talk, is on the coniveau of algebraic varieties. Claire, the virtual stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you, of course, to the organizers for inviting me to this conference. Of course, I regret very much that it is online. So this talk is about the topology of complex projective varieties. So I just want to explain what is a projective complex manifold, and the important word to start with is projective. So the projective space itself of dimension n, CPn, is the set of as a set is a set of lines in Cn plus 1. So by lines I mean one-dimensional vector spaces. And a nice way to see to understand this CPn is first to choose a linear coordinate z on Cn plus 1, and then you can represent your projective space CPn as the disjoint union of an affine Cn and Cpn minus 1 is a copy. The projective space, complex projective space of dimension 1 less. Here, the affine part, Cn half, it is the affine hyperplane defined by the equation z equal 1 inside the C to the n plus 1. And the way you see it inside the CPn is simply because a point in this affine hyperplane generates a line. Now, of course, the missing lines are those which are contained in the hyperplane z equals 0, and that's why you have to add this copy of Cpn minus 1 to get the whole of Cpn. Now, so this is a set theoretic description of Cpn, but in fact, this is a way also of describing Cpn as a complex manifold and as an algebraic variety. Namely, of course, I can change the linear coordinate, and I can choose for z any element in the basis x0, xn of c to the n plus 1 dual. And doing this describes your CPn as a complex manifold. Complex manifold is of dimension n is simply a manifold in the usual sense, except that you selected an atlas that is a covering by open set with given homeomorphism to open set of c to the n, and so there's a local open set are said to give a local holomorphic coordinates, and the important point is that the transition diffeomorphism when by the local associated to the local trivializations are holomorphic. So this is the meaning, and here if you do this, so for each choice of a coordinate, you will have this big open set Cn half with affine linear coordinates on it. So that gives me the local, needed local coordinates. And then you compute explicitly what are the change of coordinates map for CPN. This is completely explicit, and you see that they are indeed holomorphic, and in fact, much better, they are algebraic. The new coordinates that you get are algebraic functions of the old ones. Okay, so this is the ambient space for algebraic geometry, and the closed algebraic subset inside the CPN. So they will be the projective algebraic sets or the varieties. They are defined by polynomial equations, fk equals 0. So you choose homogeneous polynomials fk in the coordinates x0, x to the n on Cn plus 1. And this polynomial will not give, of course, a function on CPN. It will just give a homogeneous function on C to the n plus 1. But by homogeneity, you see that the vanishing condition of such fk depends only on the chosen line and not on the point on this line. This is the reason why such an equation define a set of equations define a subset in CPN. So, but the fk are not global, are not equations in the sense of functions, at least not globally, but they are locally, because if you consider the affine open sets, the same I started with here, which are defined by this equation xi equal 1, then the intersection of your x with xi is defined by ordinary polynomial equations, fk of x0, and I set the coordinate xi to be 1. And this gives me a polynomial which is not anymore homogeneous. And these local polynomial equations will define the x. So you see that in particular, a closed algebraic subset, it is locally defined by polynomial equations, so in particular by holomorphic equation. So that implies that the closed algebraic subset is also a closed analytic subset. Closed analytic subset, it's something that is closed for the global topology and locally defined by a holomorphic equation. So, and a very important result in the subject, which is in fact easy to prove, is the theorem by Chow, saying that conversely, if you have a closed analytic subset of CPN, it is algebraic. That is, it is defined by can be defined by a global homogeneous equations. Okay, so that's all that I wanted to say to introduce the object. And so the other part of my talk will be devoted to topology. And for the topology, the topological invariant I will consider are only homology and cohomology. And I want to insist on the fact that according to the coefficients you choose, you get different sort of information. So here I just need the much weaker structure of X as a topological space. And then if I choose a group of coefficients, maybe in my talk that will be only the Z or the Q or R or C also is very important in this subject. Then you can define the homology groups, HI of X with coefficient in A, and then the Bethe numbers, BI of X, are defined as the rank of the homology of X with, for example, Z coefficient. By the change of coefficient theorem, you can put here Q or R, you will get the same rank. So I recall that these homology groups, here I define them as a singular homology group. This is the homology groups, they are the homology groups of the complex of singular chains. So the complex, in degree I, you get Ci of XA. So this is a free A model built on which are for generators, the set of continuous maps from the I simplex to X, and the differential is given by a restriction to the faces. So you have I simplex of dimension I, it has I+1 faces, which are pictured here, and you take the alternate sum of the restriction map to the faces. So that gives you the differential, and you take the homology of that. And with this description, it is very clear that the homology is covariant, because if you have a continuous map from a topological space X to another space, topological space Y, then you have a map F lower star on the complex of singular chains, which to phi associate F composed with phi, and this maps will induce is compatible with the differentials, and it will induce a F lower star map in homology. And okay, so in fact, I will be more interested into singular cohomology. So the link is completely explicit. For singular cohomology, you dualize the complex. So that will be, instead of the complex of singular chains, you take the complex of singular cochains, and everything is dualized. So you take the cohomology of this complex, and you will get cohomology H upper star I of X A. So for obvious reason, everything is dualized. So it is a contravariant. It means that you will have a F upper star from cohomology of X, from a cohomology of Y to cohomology of X in any degree I and for any coefficient A. So the reason why we in algebraic geometry prefer singular cohomology is because it has a much more general definition as a Schiff cohomology of X with value in the constant Schiff A. So I am not going to explain what it is, but this is just to say that once you realize that you have this more abstract definition, you see that all the other cohomology theories are just various ways of computing the same object. So that makes very natural the various comparison theorems that we have, in particular the famous Doram comparison theorem, which says that if X is a differentiable manifold, you can compute the HI of XR, for example, which was our singular cohomology group with coefficient in R, as a Doram cohomology of X, namely the quotient of the space of closed I forms on X modulo the exact ones. Okay, so now the link between homology and cohomology. If you are working with a coefficient in a field, for example, Q and R, homology and cohomology are just dual, because you just look at the definition to compute the cohomology, you just dualize the complex of singular chains, and the operation of dualizing, if you are over this coefficient in a field, it passes through to cohomology. But the situation is much more complicated with Z coefficients, and it is not true with Z coefficients that cohomology is dual to the homology. So there are the difficulties with the torsion. So that's why it is important to work with. Well, we have a very important tool in the case of compact-oriented manifold. Now it's the dimension here is a real dimension, and the tool is the Poincaré duality theorem, which says that if X is compact-oriented manifold, smooth of dimension M, then the homology HI of XZ is isomorphic to the cohomology HM minus I of XZ. So this isomorphism is canonical, but it depends on the choice of orientation. Okay, so these are the generalities on the algebraic geometry on one side and the topology on the other side. And now the roof question is what can we say starting from algebraic geometry data, what can we say on the topology of an algebraic variety? So now I will be interested in smooth projective varieties so that there will be closed algebraic subset in the previous sense, but I add the condition of smoothness, and I will ask that my X has dimension n. So the n here is a complex dimension or the algebraic dimension. So in fact, the real dimension as a manifold will be twice 2n. So the smoothness it is already defined inside algebraic geometry, or if you prefer in analytic geometry. It is my X is locally defined by algebraic equations, polynomials, and the condition is that it is locally defined by equation by exactly capital N minus n equations with independent differentials. So it's exactly the Jacobian criterion for smoothness that we meet in the theory of manifolds. So we see that, of course, these equations, as I said, they are holomorphic equations. They are polynomial, but in particular holomorphic. And so this X is also a complex compact manifold of dimension n. And this is the complex dimension working with complex analytic functions. And in fact, if you see it just as an ordinary manifold, it is of real dimension 2n. And furthermore, it is oriented because there is the so-called complex orientation. If you consider C to the n, it has a canonical orientation. Okay, so the question is now what can we say on the topology of these objects? So let me start with a very simple, the simplest case that you can imagine. This is a case of smooth plane curves. So a plane curve will be defined by a single polynomial, single homogeneous polynomial, which has a degree, homogeneity degree. And on the other hand, if I see this, I see my X as a complex compact manifold of dimension 1, and even less, I see this as a compact real-oriented surface. I can use the topological classification of these objects, and I know that they are classified by a single numerical invariant. I guess I have to add the fact that we know by another argument, not very hard, but we know that it is connected, and now connected compact-oriented surfaces, they are exactly classified by a single invariant, which is called the genus. And on the picture, it is the number of holes. And so let me give an example of a mini theorem that links algebraic geometry to topology. It is the fact that this smooth plane curve of degree d has the corresponding compact Riemann surface has its genus given by this formula. 2d minus 2 is equal to d times d minus 3. So d is the degree here. And so the proof is quite easy. By connectedness, b0 of x is equal to 1. By Poincare duality, b2 of x is equal to 1 also, because the h2 is dual to h0. And also, more or less by definition of the genus, the number, the Betti number b1 is 2g. So you get that the Euler-Poincare characteristic of x is equal to 2 minus 2g. And now there is the Hopf formula, a beautiful formula in algebraic topology. which says that for a compact-oriented manifold, you can compute the Euler Poincaré characteristic as the number of zeros of a general vector field. And when I say general, I mean a vector field on X, which is transverse. So it's a section of the tangent bundle. It's transverse. That means that there will be finitely many zeros which are transverse. And now, when I say the number, I should put here mark that this is a number that we have to compute with multiplicities because a vector field it has a local invariant which is the index. So in fact, this number it's a number of zeros counted with a sign which is the index. Now this number of zeros it is also minus the number of zeros of a general holomorphic one form because holomorphic one form if you have a holomorphic one form alpha, you can consider its real part which is just two form in the one form in the ordinary sense, and the number of zeros of your the zeros of your holomorphic one form will exactly correspond to the zero of its real part. And then the minus is just because you pass from the tangent bundle to the cotangent bundle, and then the number, the counting, well, you have to change the sign exactly for this reason. Okay, so finally we are reduced to computing this the number of zeros of a general holomorphic one form, and now we apply the adjunction formula. If you like, it's a residue construction, and that shows that a holomorphic one form on X, general holomorphic one form on X can be computed. Well, by taking the residue of meromorphic two form on CP2, which has poles along the curve, and then you see that the vanishing of this, the zeros of this holomorphic one form correspond in bijection with the zeros of a degree d minus 3 polynomial restricted to X. And this degree d minus 3 polynomial appears when you construct a meromorphic two form on CP2 with poles along the curve. And so finally we are reduced to compute this, and this is a Bézout theorem which says that if you have a degree d minus 3 polynomial, you restrict it to the plane curve of degree d, and then you will get exactly d times d minus 3 0. So that gives us this is the argument. And now this theorem is just a very small, how to say that, just small manifestation of a vast principle by Grothendieck and Serre, which says that if you have a complex projective manifold, the Bettin numbers of X can be computed via abstract algebraic geometry data. Basically, if you have the equations, you know how to compute the Bettin numbers. Well, this is of course very vague formulated like this. A more precise version is that, which is more related to the explanation I gave in the case of a plane curve, is that if you consider the cohomology of X with the C coefficients of this singular or Schiff cohomology of degree I, as I explained before, this can be computed as algebraic de Rham cohomology of X of degree I. And this algebraic de Rham cohomology, it is something that you compute using only algebraic differential forms on X. So this is not. So this is a sort of version of the de Rham theorem in the setting of algebraic geometry. So that doesn't mean, of course, that you take the global algebraic forms and take the closed ones modulo the exact one, because you have to take a so-called hypercohomology. So basically, you do this, but you also have to combine this with some Schiff cohomology. And if you put the both together, you get this object. But the fact is that we don't need topology, and we don't need even any analysis, any transcendental tools it is just something that you use the Zariski topology and only differential forms, algebraic differential forms, and everything is defined inside algebraic geometry. So this is, of course, a very important result, especially, well, for example, in arithmetic. Now, I would like to insist on the fact that this theorem is, of course, it's very important. It does not say too much in the sense that it is in fact wrong that the homeomorphism tape of X is determined by algebraic geometry data. So let me explain again. The statement is a little vague. Let me explain the example. This was found by Serre in the 50s. The example. So what Serre does is the following construction. So suppose that you have an X in CPN, which is defined by a number of finite number of homogeneous equations, Fi. And now I assume that the equations have coefficients with value have coefficients in a number field K, which is a Galois extension of Q. And then you choose any element G of the Galois group of K over Q. And this G will act on the coefficients of the defining equation. It acts, of course, on K and on K of X0, Xn. And so now you will get new equations. And the new equations will define a new variety that will be denoted by Xg, which is contained in CPN. It is called the conjugate variety for an obvious reason. And if you apply this Grothendieck-Serre theorem, which allows to compute the Betti cohomology in this way, you see that X and Xg have the same Betti numbers. And also, if you apply a more complicated tool, well, for example, étale cohomology, much more sophisticated tools invented by Grothendieck, you can even see that they have the same cohomology algebra with complex coefficients. Same, I mean, isomorphic. But in fact, they are not homeomorphic in general. And of course, you have to work to construct such examples. And in the example by Serre, the X and Xg are shown to be not homeomorphic because they have different non-isomorphic fundamental groups. Okay. So now I introduce the central notion of the talk, which was appearing in the title. So this is a notion, a very simple notion introduced by Grothendieck. The idea is that we try to understand the cohomology of an algebraic variety. The cohomology, there is something transcendental in the cohomology, and we want to try to see how our knowledge of X as an algebraic variety helps to understand this cohomology. So the notion is that of coniveau filtration on cohomology. So let's assume that your X again is a projective complex manifold. I say that a class, cohomology class alpha in HAI of XA, so maybe any coefficient, but I will be mainly concerned with Z and Q, has a coniveau at least C, if, so to say it quickly, it is supported on a closed algebraic subset of codimension at least C. So that means that there exists a Y in X, contained in X, in the closed algebraic subset of codimension C, or at least C, such that the class alpha vanishes in the cohomology of the complement, vanishes away from Y. So I will denote by NC HI of XA, the group of classes of coniveau at least C. So in this definition, I use the notion of codimension for a Y, which is usually singular, and that will be very important in the rest of the talk. The fact is that an algebraic, closed algebraic set has a dimension. Of course, the codimension here of Y is simply the n minus the dimension. now the dimension is defined as follows. So if you have a y, usually it's singular, very complicated, but the first thing to do is that you can write it as a finite union of irreducible closed algebraic set. And irreducible closed algebraic set has the properties that it has a singular locus. When you remove the singular locus, what you get is an open set, which is dense and which is connected. So this is the irreducibility is in the fact that when you remove the singular set, it is connected. So now you remove the singular set, and what you get is a smooth, now it's a smooth complex manifold. And because it is connected, it has a given dimension, NL, and that will define the dimension of YL. And then for your Y, its dimension will be the supremum over all of the dimensions of all the irreducible components. Okay, so now I have this condition star that alpha vanishes on the complement of Y, which is not very pleasant to use. But there is a more geometric way to see this condition. Maybe you need for this version of Poincaré duality. Of course, you can say that you can write a relative, an exact sequence, long exact sequence of a relative cohomology, and says that it means that alpha comes from cohomology with support on Y, but again, it's not so concrete. A better way is to say that this is equivalent to the following fact, that there exists a homology class beta on Y, of course of degree h2n minus I, with the properties that the class alpha is the Poincaré, you apply the Poincaré duality isomorphism on X, it cannot be equal PD, the Poincaré dual of G lower star beta. So you have this homology class on Y of degree 2n minus I. You push it forward via the inclusion of Y to X, so that gives you the G lower star beta. This is now a homology class of degree 2n minus I on X, and you apply the Poincaré duality isomorphism to get your class of degree I. So this is the better way to understand this this condition star, and immediately that gives some small results on this Coniveau filtration. For example, that if 2c is strictly greater than I, then NC HI of XA is equal to 0. And if we have the equality, 2c equal to I, then NC H2C of XA is generated over A, of course, as a module, by classes of algebraic subsets irreducible algebraic subsets Y containing X of codimension C. And the explanation is that, well, if 2C is strictly greater than I, then 2n minus I is strictly greater than 2n minus 2C. But 2n minus 2C, it is the real dimension of Y. Which because Y is supposed to be closed of codimension C. And because and now, because the real dimension of Y is 2n minus 2c, it's a homology in degree strictly greater than 2n minus 2c is 0. So that gives this vanishing. And if you have the equality that 2c is equal to Y, then you get that the dimension, the real dimension of Y is exactly now 2n minus 2c. And then we know by stratification, for example, that the homology of Y in this degree is generated by the fundamental homology classes of the components YL of Y of dimension n minus c. And then what I call the classes of the algebraic subsets are exactly, by definition, the Poincaré dual of the fundamental homology classes of the components. So, okay. I was asked to make a break for questions. So if some people have a question now about what has been explained up to now, they are welcome.
Yes, so if you have any questions, please send them in, and I will try to answer them. More comments or yes, William. But I don't see the question.
Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, you can
Yeah.
ask a question.
I want to know more. I want to know of this in the industry.
Maybe it's better to write down the question because we can hear you quite well.
Yes, if you write the question, I will pass it along. In the meantime, do we have any other questions? Okay.
Yes, there's something here.
I mean, you're asking about applications in the industry. I'm not so sure. I
mean, it's a question that you can ask to any kind of for any kind of mathematics. Personally, I would say there are certainly applications because the theory is always sometimes before application. But I am not the right person to answer this.
I see no more questions, so
okay.
Continue.
We'll continue.
Okay. Okay, so what I wanted to do now is I want to distinguish Z coefficient and Q coefficient. I want and discuss important results on the so I consider class alpha in the rational cohomology of my X, which is a smooth projective, and which is of coniveau at least C. And as I explained, that means that you can see it as saying that alpha is Poincare dual of homology class, which is of the form G lower star beta for some beta on in the homology with rational coefficient of my Y. But the problem is that this Y is singular in general, and we don't like singular varieties because in particular they do not satisfy Poincare duality. So it's much more difficult to understand when to say something clever and substantial on their homology. So the natural question is, in this formula, can we replace Y by a desingularized model Y tilde to Y? So here I use Hironaka resolution of singularity. It says that starting from any singular algebraic set, there exists say Y. There exists a Y tilde over Y, which has a property that the map to here, it is surjective, proper, and it is an isomorphism above the smooth locus of Y. This is what we call a desingularization. And so the question is whether we could rewrite this formula here as saying that alpha is Poincare dual of G tilde lower star of beta tilde, where the G tilde is G composed with 2, and so from Y tilde to X, and the beta tilde is in the homology of Y tilde. That will be much more pleasant. And the answer is yes, precisely because I am with a Q coefficient. And this is an extremely deep result by Deligne, saying that in this situation, and because of course X is smooth projective, the two maps, G lower star from the homology of Y with Q coefficients to the homology of X with Q coefficients, and G tilde lower star from the homology of Y tilde to the homology of X have the same image for all G. So it's a very hard result, very deep, proved by Deligne, say 68, which uses the formalism of mixed Hodge structure, which is a fundamental tool to understand the topology of a singular object. So in this case, I can simply not explain how it works. I want to insist on the fact that this statement is wrong with Z coefficient. And here, let me give an example. If you have if I start from a complex torus of dimension 2, which is a projective that exists, it's called an abelian surface, and I take a smooth curve, say for example, a smooth genus 2 curve in A, so we call it a C tilde, and now you consider the multiplication map by 2 from A to A, and the curve C will be the image of C tilde by M2, so it's M2 of C tilde, and you see that even if this one is smooth, the curve C will get singularities because, well, when you apply this map M2, the curve will cross itself downstairs. And okay, so the curve C will be singular, and the map from C tilde to C will be, in fact, the designation map. But you also can see it as a G tilde map. It is also M2 composed with G prime. G prime was the inclusion of C tilde in A. And now there is the Lefschetz theorem on hyperplane section, again, a very beautiful result in anthropology of algebraic varieties. We'll say that the G lower star map from H1 of CZ to H1 of AZ is surjective, while the G tilde lower star map, it is M2 lower star composed with G prime lower star. So in fact, it is 2 G prime lower star. So its image is contained in 2 H1 of AZ. So they are completely different in that case. Okay, so now I want to explain the consequence of this Deligne theorem. So I need to, for this, to say something, a fundamental fact again on the topology of smooth projective variety, namely the existence of the Hodge decomposition on the cohomology with complex coefficient of a smooth projective variety. So the Hodge decomposition theorem says that Hi of XC is a direct sum of complex vector subspaces HPQ of X for P plus Q equal to I. And here you can define the HPQ of X as a set of Durham cohomology classes of closed forms on X, closed differential forms with complex coefficients, which are of type PQ with respect to the complex structure. And once you have this description of the HPQ, it's very clear that the HQP of X is just the complex conjugate of HPQ of X. Here, a complex conjugacy acts on Hi of XC because it's Hi of XR tensor C, so it acts on the coefficient. So, and this data, the Hodge decomposition to be satisfying the Hodge symmetry here, this is what we call a weight I rational Hodge structure. Now, if you have two smooth projective varieties, Y tilde and X, and you have a morphism from Y tilde to X, morphism has just been any holomorphic map, automatically by Chow it will be algebraic. We denote by C the difference of the two dimensions, the dimension of X minus the dimension of, sorry, that should be a Y tilde. Then you have a Gysin map, F lower star, from Hi minus 2C of Y tilde Q to Hi of XQ. So this Gysin map, it is, well, because the Y tilde is smooth, you can apply the Poincare duality on Y tilde. Now you are in homology, you apply the F lower star in homology, and then you apply again the Poincare duality on X, and that gives you the Gysin morphism. And it's quite easy to see that the Gysin morphism maps HP prime Q prime of Y tilde to HP prime plus C Q prime plus C of X. That means that this F-lower star map it is a bigraded. It is a map of bigraded objects if you use this bigrading that is given by the Hodge decomposition up to this shift of CC. And as a corollary, you see that the image of this map of this Gysin morphism is not any rational subspace of cohomology. It is a Hodge substructure, not only any Hodge substructure, but a Hodge substructure which has to be of a Hodge coniveau at least C. What does that mean? A Hodge substructure, it's a rational subspace which has an induced Hodge decomposition. That is when you take its complexified associated complexified vector space LC inside HI of XC. It has an induced Hodge decomposition. LC is the sum of its component LPQ, where LPQ is HPQ of X intersected with LC. And furthermore, the fact that it is of Hodge coniveau at least C, it is the vanishing of the LPQ for P smaller, strictly smaller than C, or Q strictly smaller than C. And this is an immediate corollary because we know that this F-lower star does this. It preserves the bigrading up to this shift of CC. And now, as a corollary of Deling's theorem, we see that the cohomology of coniveau C, NCHI of XQ, it must be a Hodge substructure of HI of XQ of Hodge coniveau at least C, because the Deling theorem implies that it is the image of a Gysin morphism like this. And the most important open conjecture in the field is the Grothendieck generalized Hodge conjecture, which is in fact a particular case of which is the usual Hodge conjecture. Namely, conversely, if you take a Hodge substructure of HI of XQ, which is of Hodge coniveau at least C, it should be contained in, it should be of coniveau at least C, contained in NCHI of XQ. So the case, the usual Hodge conjecture is a case where I is equal to 2C, because if you consider Hodge substructure in NC, sorry, Hodge substructure of Hodge coniveau C in H2C of XQ, it is made of Hodge classes. You just have a rational cohomology classes which are of type CC. It's quite easy from this formalism. So, and now the Grothendieck generalized Hodge conjecture predicts that it is of coniveau C, but I already explained that classes of degree 2C and coniveau C, they are exactly the classes of algebraic subvarieties of codimension C. Okay, so now, so that was the situation over Q, and very clearly we are completely stuck on understanding this coniveau, except that we know, at least we have a picture conjecturally of how the coniveau, which was defined in algebraic geometry term, is related to something that we see on the cohomology, namely the Hodge decomposition, the Hodge structure. So now the rest of the talk is devoted to the situation over the integers. And so I will introduce the following terminology due to Benoit and Autem. I will say that the class alpha in HI of XZ has a strong coniveau at least C if there exists a Y smooth projective of dimension n-C, that is codimension C, and a morphism from Y to X, such that alpha is F-lower star beta for some beta in HI minus 2C of YZ. That is, compared to the previous formula, I already passed to the desingularization of my support Y. And I will use that notation that alpha is in N tilde C, HI of XZ. And obviously, being of strong coniveau C implies that you are on of coniveau C, because if you have this formula, then your alpha will vanish in the cohomology on the open set X minus the image of Y. But the image of Y, it is a closed algebraic subset of the codimension at least C. So we have this inclusion. And if I was with a Q coefficients, the Deligne theorem would say that we have this equality. But precisely, quite recently, Benoit and Otem exhibited examples showing that this is not an equality with a Z coefficient. They prove that for any I at least 3, there exists a smooth projective variety X and a class alpha, which is of coniveau 1 on X, but not of strong coniveau 1. And on needs to work with a degree cohomology of degree at least 3, because for I equal to a class in N1H2 of XZ, I already explained this is a case, the famous case I equal to C. And so a class here, it is, I already explained that, an integral combination of classes of hypersurfaces in X. But it is known that such a class can be also written as a combination of classes of smooth hypersurfaces. This is not completely trivial, but that follows from the theory of divisors, and you may have to use a Bertini theorem. But well, there are enough smooth hypersurfaces. Okay, so we have this. So now I want to explain why I have been interested into this subject and the subtle distinction between strong coniveau and coniveau. And this is in relation with the rationality problem. So a smooth projective variety X is rational if it is birational to projective space. That is, there exists a meromorphic map from X to CPN. N is the dimension of X, which has an inverse, which is also a meromorphic map. And now there is a much weaker version, which is a much weaker definition, which is a definition of rationally connected variety, smooth projective variety. It says that X is rationally connected if for any 2 points X and Y in X, there exists a rational curve passing in X, passing to both. The rational curve is just the image of a morphism, analytic map, algebraic map from the CP1 to X. So obviously, if X is rationally connected because being rational means that you have this CPN, which maps surjectivity to X. And in CPN, you have plenty of rational curves, namely the lines, for example, the lines, the conics. And you have a CP1 passing through a line, a CP1 passing through any 2 points. So you just apply the map phi to them and get plenty of rational curves in X. So we have this obvious implication, and in dimension 1 and 2, this is an equivalence that commercially rationally connected curve or surface is rational. But in higher dimension, the reverse implication from rationally connected to rational is known to be false. So this is the negative answer to the Lurot problem. Many different many different examples have been produced since the 70s, showing that giving examples of rationally connected, for example, trefoils, which are not rational. For none of these examples, the criterion used is easy to describe. Sometimes it's easy to describe, but very hard to compute. Okay, and the link with the coniveau is simply the observation that the group, if you consider an X which is smooth and projective, the group, the quotient Hi of XZ by its classes of a strong coniveau 1 is a birational invariant for all I. And in particular, if X is rational, so that is birational to CPN. When I say birational invariant, it means that any X and Y which are both smooth projective and birational to each other will have the same associated group here. And so for CPN, we know that the cohomology is of strong coniveau 1, and we conclude that if X is rational, its cohomology is of strong coniveau 1 for any I which is strictly positive. Clearly, the H0 is not of coniveau 1. And I note that in general, this group is of torsion if X is rationally connected. This is quite easy to prove. So the question is there an interesting birational invariant here? And this is here that the distinction between niveau and coniveau is important. Namely, of course, I could introduce the same invariant with the coniveau instead of the strong coniveau. And in fact, the analogous quotient is known to be trivial for rationally connected varieties. It's a result by Colliot-Helen and myself about 10 years ago, that if X is smooth projective rationally connected, its cohomology of positive degree with integral coefficient is of coniveau 1. And of course, the obvious question now is, suppose that you have a rationally connected projective complex manifold, do we have this equality, Hi of Xz is Hi of Xz of strong coniveau 1? That is, are these groups Hi modulo N1 tilde trivial or not? Well, maybe I should go faster, but this question is interesting only for I non greater than n is the dimension of X, because it's again an application of the Lefschetz theorem on hyperplane section. You can see that you always have this equality that cohomology, if X is smooth projective of dimension n, its cohomology of degree n plus c is of strong coniveau at least c. Okay, so the result one result that I have is of course a very partial result, but that question I think is quite hard. That if X is a rationally connected projective complex trifold, then the cohomology, integral cohomology of X modulo torsion is of strong coniveau 1. The torsion part, I don't know if the torsion part is of strong coniveau 1 or not. It's a very interesting invariant. It turns out that it's also a birational invariant that can be non-zero for some rationally connected projective trifolds. This is called the Artin-Mumford invariant because precisely Artin and Mumford used this invariant in 1970 to construct to exhibit rationally connected trifolds, which are not rational, and in their case, it was not stably rational. That is, their X, when you make X cross PR, it is never rational. Okay, so and then now I finish my talk with similar, well, slightly different results or questions. Before, as I explained, it was the interesting question was concerning sorry, I'm a little lost. Okay. This slide was concerning only cohomology of degree at most n, and for the next one, that will be, in fact, to the contrary, homology of small degree, or if you prefer, cohomology of high degree. So there is the following proposition that is that reinforce well. That is the following. So suppose that X is smooth rationally connected of dimension n, then the cohomology of degree n plus c with q coefficient is of strong coniveau c plus 1 for any in that range. For c has to be taken strictly smaller than n. So you see that it is stronger than, so the general equality is this one, it's coniveau c, while now we have a coniveau c plus 1. But this is with q coefficient. And when x is rational, you have the stronger property that this equality holds with the coefficients. Okay, and so of course the natural question again, so we play the same game because we want to try to find some interesting birational invariant, allowing maybe to distinguish rationally connected from rational varieties. And the question is it true that for x smooth projective rationally connected, the cohomology of degree n plus c is of a strong coniveau c plus 1, again for c in this range. For example, typically if I do c equal n minus 2, I am asking whether the cohomology of degree 2n minus 2, which is the same by Poincare duality as the homology of degree 2, is of strong coniveau n minus 1, and I am asking, in fact, whether it is algebraic. And on this question, I have two results. One in 2006, I proved that if you have a rationally connected projective threefold, then H4 of XZ is algebraic. We have indeed this equality. And the other result, it's just the generalization of the previous result in the case of rationally degree 3 cohomology. I prove that if you have an X which is a rationally connected complex projective n-fold, then the cohomology H2n minus 3 of XZ modulo torsion, so this is by Poincare duality, is the same as the homology of degree 3. So what I prove is that, first of all, it works only modulo torsion. I just prove the equality of coniveau n minus 2 and strong coniveau n minus 2 homology in that situation. So I don't know what is the situation for the torsion. And maybe the last remark is that here I just compare strong coniveau and coniveau n minus 2. And in fact, another interesting birational invariant is to consider the quotient of degree 3, this quotient H2 n minus 3 of XZ modulo coniveau n minus 2 H2 n minus 3. Okay, I stop now.
Thank you, Claire. A question was asked in your theorem from 2020. The question is whether I is different than 3.
Oh, sorry. I should be 3. It's just a typo.
Okay. Okay.
Obviously, this should be H3. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, if not, well, thank you so much for a wonderful lecture. I don't know how we do thank you and clapping on on this type of media, but thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you. So what should I do now?
Oh, it's okay.
Uh,
You start sharing. You stop sharing, sorry.
Okay. Okay, I think.
Yes.
So thank you, Claire. And in 11 minutes, we have 3 different activities starting in other Zoom rooms. So, well, I will close this room for now. Bye.
Okay. Thank you so much, Claire. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.